It's the Ozman right here on your classic metal show with You Can't Kill Rock and Roll. And, I believe that's a philosophy that our good friend Bob Nalbandian lived by.
I certainly agree with that. He would not be happy with all the weeping and sadness. He'd be like, fucking straighten up, bitch.
Well, we're here to talk about Bob, and he definitely was a guy that we enjoyed knowing and gotten to know over. Boy, how long did we know Bob? I mean, when did we first come in contact with him? Was this after you came back?
No.
Actually, he actually helped fill in some of my shows when you were gone.
Yeah, he discovered us, and I think it might be one of the clips. If it's not one of the clips that I sent you, it's the clip that you played at the beginning, where he listened to the best of the classic metal show.
Yeah,
that was like 2006 or something. Yeah,
I think you're right.
Yeah, so I mean, he's been with us for what, 15 years?
Yeah. Well, 06, 16, 15, 16, 17 years.
Yeah, 17 years.
Wow.
Again, with the math, we think it's a couple of years, and then we look at it, we're like, fuck, it's 2 decades.
Yeah, it's really difficult to think that. Holy shit, we've been friends with Bob that long.
Yeah. Well, I mean, dude, think about it. In the time that we were friends with Bob, he made, if my count is right, 9 movies.
Yeah.
The porn movie, Band versus Brand, all 6 of the Bay Area Godfathers, and that's 8. What was the other one? There's one more in there somewhere. I know there is. Something else that he was involved in. There's a 9th, I know that, but 9 movies just in the time that we've known Bob.
Right.
It's a lot of work, man.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Now that, geez, I hate to think that, but man, you're absolutely right. And here's this is I think Bob reached out to us. I think you actually fielded his first email to us, I think.
Probably.
And I think you forwarded on to me because he was involved with that hard radio.
Right. And I didn't like Tracy Barnes.
Yeah. And you said, hey, I got this email from this cool guy. This guy's got a real history and metal and so on and so forth. And I think we invited him on.
Probably so, yeah.
And then we're just like, yeah, and so here's actually the clip you were talking about or making reference to when Bob came on, and I believe this was about 2006.
Yeah, first time he was on the show, right?
You guys don't remember?
Oh, I remember.
I was absolutely frightened, man. I got to tell you, man, when I first heard that show, holy shit, man.
Which show was
best
that?
Of the classic metal show. I when I started the podcast, I was listening to other podcasts, and I came across your show, and I'm going, awesome, man. These guys are great doing classic metal. Because, as you know, most of the podcasts, heavy metal podcasts, they're all like new bands and, the same old shit. But, here's you guys doing this classic metal interviews with all my favorite bands, adding a great sense of humor. So I'm like, great, this is awesome. And I started listening to a few of the podcasts, and then I saw the best of the classic metal show. So I said, wow, this is going to be great. I can listen to this one show, hear segments of all the interviews from that year, and then kind of go back and listen to them, and I could get, listen to it all on one take. It was a 6-hour show, and dude, I have not heard any show with so much verbal abuse on your callers and other people. It was great. I actually sat through all 6 hours and just couldn't believe it. After hearing it, it's like, wow, these guys are awesome, man. This is what metal radio should be, and you don't get this kind of stuff anymore. So yeah, I'm a big fan of the show. Absolutely.
There you are. A ringing endorsement from our good friend Bob.
That's right.
So wow, yeah, that's a long time. So anyway, Bob was a frequent guest here on the show, and he would fill us in with what he had going on as far as his projects were concerned, or he would just chime in just to be a part of a discussion we were having, and
Sure.
lend his insight and his personal experience with maybe an artist we were talking about or a certain subject. And he took us back to things that filled us in on things we weren't aware of. And the guy had an archive of stuff that he did, as far as having his own print magazine,
Headbanger,
which is something you did.
mm-hmm.
You started a print magazine and ran that for a few years, and
Sure.
so you two had that in common, and
Mm-hmm.
had the drive to do that. And then Bob branched out into managing bands and helping various musicians connect with other musicians, and managed and worked with the record labels, worked with record companies. So this guy had a rich history of his whole career from the time he was a teenager until just yesterday. The guy's whole life was nothing but music.
And let's not forget that he was one of the originals with us in Talking Metal in the podcasting, in the hard rock heavy metal podcasting world.
Yeah, true.
Skull Sessions was one of what came out like literally 6 months after we did.
Right.
It was right at the beginning.
He was, as you heard in that clip, he was listening to other podcasts to see what they were doing,
mm-hmm.
and kind of helped him formulate his own podcast, his own show, and put his own show.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he did.
Yeah, and Bob was he was that kind of guy. He was always up to something, and he didn't want any credit for any of it. That was always the thing with Bob. You'd be like, and I'm sure you can share on this too, but you would tell Bob something, like he would send us the what do you call those? The screener links to watch the movies before they came out. Yeah. And a lot of times he'd send them to us. He'd be like, hey, if you see anything that's spelled wrong, or or there's something that's edited wrong or something, let me know where it is so I can fix it, blah, blah, blah. And we would watch them. And I know for me, I would hit him back. I'd be like, dude, this was fucking great. I like this and I like that, man. Great work. And he'd be like, oh man, it's not about that. It's about it's about the music. Yeah. He never would be like, yeah, I did do something fucking fantastic here, and he, he was that kind of a guy. He wouldn't take like positivity and just wear it on. I think he took it. I think he internalized it, but I think he was uncomfortable with it. He was uncomfortable for somebody to say, yeah, man, you did a good thing. He was much more comfortable kind of staying behind the scenes and being not in front of, he didn't want to be the name. He just wanted to do good work.
Yeah. And we understood what he had to go through, because, those Inside Metal documentaries had a lot of interviews, and it took a lot of time and effort to schedule those interviews with those various people, a lot of travel. He was traveling between, Southern California and Northern California. And I think he was even out to like Las Vegas and various other places to catch up with, these various people who he interviewed for these documentaries. And, it took a good close to 2 years per documentary to get them all put together and gather the material and gather the B-roll and the background footage and all that other stuff. It was a tireless effort for him to put this together. And when we would catch up with him during the filming of a documentary, he was just like, yeah, I had to spend a week in San Francisco, and then I had to travel to Las Vegas, and I was there for 3 or 4 days, and then I had to go back to Orange County. Then I had to, back and forth with him and his video guy.
Yeah. No, he was always, dude, I think I logged more miles on the phone with Bob on those trips, because Bob would call me a lot. Like it's funny. He would listen to the CMS Like he would download all the episodes from the week before prior to a drive because he knew he had a long drive, and he was a he was a legitimate fan of what we do. Not to pat us on the back, I'm just saying he definitely was a fan of the CMS. And my phone would ring every time he was traveling. My phone would ring, and he'd be like, dude, I was just listening to this segment, blah, 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 and I laughed my ass off when you said this and Neeley said that. Like, he was actively listening to it. I'd be like, well, what are you doing? Well, I got to go down here to do this, or I got 2 interviews to do tomorrow with so-and-so, and, and then I'm going back to Northern California, or maybe I'll stay in Southern California for a week and go see my mom or something, but he was always, and I was always like, dude, you are running on fumes. He's like, man, it's just part of what I do. It's all good. Never, yeah, you're right, dude. This fucking sucks doing all this driving. Sure. He was always like, yeah, it's just kind of what I do. He loved it. He loved it, and he would never take credit for even like littler things that he did. He did them because he loved them, like T Radio V.
Oh yeah. Well, we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah, I mean, but he did that just because he loved doing it, not because he needed it. I don't think he got paid doing it. He just loved doing it, and he did great work when he did it. He was always ahead of the curve. He was a passionate guy toward the metal. He just was not he wasn't the guy to ever come out and say, "Yeah, I'm Bob fucking Nalbandian, and this is my show, motherfucker."
Yeah, well, he definitely wasn't a flashy guy at all.
No, not at all.
Like somebody here. But yeah, he definitely wasn't a flashy guy. Very, very low key, very humble, very
sure.
He certainly wasn't the star of the show, as it were.
Right.
And if you ever watch the documentaries that he did do, he's rarely ever on the screen. It's all focused on the subject at hand or the person that he was interviewing or whatever. Mm-hmm. Once in a while, you'd hear him chime in with a question or something, or
right.
You might see him in the the end B roll, as the credits are rolling or something. But he was never in the videos. He was never in the documentaries.
Yeah, he didn't want to be like I said earlier. I watched back today Bay Area Godfathers 1 and 2, and in combined, he's in for one scene. He's actually in one scene, mm-hmm. and that the only time he's in any of the scenes is when he was sitting there with Jason Becker, and he was sitting next to Jason Becker's mom, wife, girlfriend. I don't know who that girl is, the translator girl.
Uh-huh.
And that was the only time Bob was sitting there. And then there was one other time when he was talking to Marty Friedman, and Friedman and him got talking a little bit. Friedman was talking about some gig that some fans drove him to. And they were talking about when Bob, and he just pointed at him. He goes, and you set me up with this gig, and it was like the only time that Bob was like referenced in the whole 2 videos, 3 hours of video.
Right. Exactly.
He just was that guy. He did not want the attention. He just wanted the work. He wanted the craft.
Yeah. And that he did. And, speaking of the documentaries in the first few documentaries, the Inside Metal documentaries, even though you and I didn't contribute or appear in any of them, he always put us in the credits.
Yeah. Yeah. He told me, because I asked him about that, and I'm sure you probably did too, but I asked him, I said, dude, why are we in this? We didn't do anything. And he was like, dude, you guys promote my stuff better than anybody does. So, and he was literally giving us credit just for having him on the show. And we would have had him on, just like we would have anybody on the show that's doing something cool, if they're doing something cool and something about rock and metal, we would have had anybody on, but we had Bob on a lot. Dude, it's crazy. I did a quick search on our channel, on the CMS channel on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
34 episodes.
Yeah, I believe that.
Yeah, I mean, that's an astronomical amount of appearances.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's That's a lot of appearances. I mean, and figure each one of those is an hour. That's 34 hours of show that Bob did with us.
Yeah, and he co-hosted a whole show with me at one time.
Yeah,
in your absence. Yeah,
he did. I mean, I know, in the later years, I co-hosted for him, like when he was having throat surgery. And I don't know if you remember that, but I ended up stepping in and doing skull sessions for him, because that was kind of the relationship that we had built, was that, we're all kind of a team. We were a team together. And I mean, honestly, I don't know how many people know this, but that Bob is the reason there is a CMS network. It started as, we were doing our thing, Bob was doing his thing, and we were both just promoting each other's episodes every week. Bob would put out an episode and me or you would say, hey, don't forget, check out Skull Sessions this week. Bob's talking to, John Bush or whoever he was talking to. And Bob would do the same thing with us on his show. He'd be like, yeah, I was watching the Classic Metal Show. Make sure you check it out, theclassicmetalshow.com. He'd be plugging us. And I just said to him one day, I said, why don't we just fucking work together on this shit? Why don't we just form a network? And the network was formed. It was Skull Sessions, Classic Metal Show, and that was right at the time Matt and I were starting Aftershocks. And Matt was also the co-host of Skull Sessions.
Right.
So it really was just our little couple of few shows that we were doing that led to, now I'm turning it into my full-time job.
Right.
And that came out of Bob. That was, I can't say enough strong things about Bob and about, his contributions. His contributions never were, hey, I'm Bob Nalbandian. They were always behind the scenes. No, they were always behind the scenes and quiet. And, it's a true testament to him that, like, I don't know if you saw, did you see any of the celebrities that posted about him?
Yeah. I saw on Blabbermouth and, on Brave Words and stuff. Yeah.
I mean, Dave Mustaine basically said, you guys got Rust in Peace because of this guy. That's basically what he said on his Facebook today.
Mm-hmm.
And what a compliment. What a compliment to say, I met Marty Friedman because of Bob Nalbandian.
Right, exactly.
I mean, wow. Some of the greatest metal. I mean, whether people agree or not, I think most people agree that Rust in Peace is a top 5 metal album of all time.
Absolutely.
That comes from at least some effort from Bob Nalbandian.
Right.
Metallica. How many, Lars Ulrich posting about Bob Nalbandian today. Obviously a player in that realm, in the early days of their scene. I mean, it's like, holy smokes, this guy was, at least played a part in so much of the music that we listened to, and he never was out front about it. He was always behind the scenes and quiet about it. And it's good to see that everybody is expressing that sentiment that he was important.
Right. Well, you mentioned T Radio V. That was an interesting project that Bob's friend had, invested this money into this, for lack of a better term, internet television studio.
Sure.
And I was invited. We were all invited to go out to the screenings of the Inside Metal,
right?
And I did make the trip out to go to a couple of the screenings.
Sure.
And they had it in this small theater that was an old time theater in West Hollywood, or North Hollywood rather, I believe. And while I was out there, I was given the opportunity to go check out this T Radio V setup.
Right.
And, it was definitely an interesting concept that it was, T Radio V, which was television radio,
right,
which is where that came from. And Bob, out off of the back of the Inside Metal video series, he decided to do an Inside Metal television show that aired, I believe, on Mondays, if I'm not mistaken.
It did, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And through the technology of the internet, he invited us to come on, and through the use of webcams, obviously, which is what we're doing today.
Sure.
And this was way back in 2015. We were doing this. We were guests on T Radio V, like guest co-host type things,
right?
Through video, through the webcam video and stuff. And he wanted us to be a part of his T Radio V television show.
Yeah.
And they were able to, beam us in, as it were, and be part of his broadcast, which was very cool. It was very cutting edge.
Yeah, it was way ahead of today.
Yeah, exactly.
Back then, I mean, it was really iffy if it was going to work.
Right.
I think, because I do remember the phone calls ahead of that. And Bob was like, well, if you get cut off, just try again and try and connect again. He was so worried that we weren't going to be able to do it. And it went off pretty flawlessly, I thought.
It went off pretty well. I actually watched an episode of it today.
Okay.
It was out there still on the YouTube out there.
Right.
And, he invited us in to be a part of his show, which was pretty cool. And we thought that, well, this is going to be kind of the future of television, which in general it is, because we're doing it now.
Sure.
And this was 7 years ago, almost 8 years ago already.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a pretty cool setup over there. They invested a lot of money in the studio and the equipment and the camera and the internet feed. And unfortunately it didn't last. It lasted a couple years, I think. And I guess it just didn't generate the money that they had hoped that it would make, through commercial support and things. But the concept was great for that time. And Bob took advantage of it, and had his Inside Metal show on there, and he had a couple of our friends on there. He had the V from Benedictum on, and he had Don Dokken on, and who else did he have in as studio?
Jeff Scott Soto was in. Steven Adler was on it at one point. Just a bunch. John Five was on it. I mean, he had a bunch. And again, that was another weird thing about Bob. Bob knew everybody.
Yes, he did. And that'll lead into, meeting Bob for the first time and having the opportunity to attend the NAMM shows,
sure.
for several years. And, one of the reasons I even went to NAMM is because Bob was going to be there.
Right.
But because of Bob knowing everybody, to go to NAMM, unless you've been to NAMM, it's held at the Anaheim Convention Center over there.
Right.
And this thing is massive. It's 5 floors of convention center. And
wow.
Unless you know where you're going or who's going to be, have a display there or whatever, you would be lost.
Well, not only that, let's even go back before that part. If you didn't know somebody, you weren't getting in.
Well, yeah, you have to get a pass,
But you get the pass only if the pass comes with a hookup.
It basically, yeah. And so fortunately, the last time I went to NAMM, we've built this show up to where I was able to get a pass through the CMS on standing on its own. But
sure.
Prior to that, I had to get it through somebody else.
Right, which would have been Bob.
Exactly. And actually, who was it that hooked me up a couple of times was, I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but Bob hooked me up with the people who had the ability to get me passes to get in this thing. And had it not been for Bob, I would have never got to go to NAMM. Because
sure.
NAMM is a closed thing. It's not open to the public, and you got to know somebody to get in. And it's like an exclusive club. And this thing was so huge, and it lasts for days. It kicks off, I believe, on Wednesday and runs through Sunday. And I usually would fly out on Wednesday, and Thursday is when things get cranking up out there. And Bob and Toby, who did a lot of the voiceover work on the Inside Metal DVDs. I met up with him and Bob and several other Bob's friends, and he would lead us through the NAMM showrooms for 3 days in a row, basically introducing me to everybody he knew, and he knew everybody. He knew.
Dude, that was always fun. Go ahead.
He knew what booth was, where every booth was, and who was going to be at this booth, and who was this, and he introduced me to so many people over the years that I went, and it was like, wow, I got to meet Steve Vai, I got to meet the guitarist from Exodus,
Gary Holt.
Yeah, Gary Holt. Ran into him several times, and ran into obviously our good friend Jack Frost was out there numerous times, and
sure.
Just a bunch of different people, the guys from Armored Saint. He introduced me to the guys from Armored Saint. They were always there, and he introduced me to Gus G. And, he just would walk up and say, "Hey, Bob." Everybody knew Bob. Everybody knew. And it was just like hanging with Bob was just like your pass to meeting anybody you wanted to know.
Yeah. Well, and dude, and that stretched into the radio world. Again, going back before, obviously we know a lot of people now, but it was always like, I mean, for just to share, you never ask somebody else to do a direct hookup. Most of for the interview side, for the, this side of things, if somebody knows somebody, you ask them who to contact. You don't ask them, "Hey, can you get Lars Ulrich on my show?" You ask them, "Hey, who do I talk to get Lars on the show," or whatever. And I know a lot of times I would just hit dead ends when I'd be looking for guests, and I would call Bob and I'd be like, "Hey, man, do you know anybody that's in this person's camp or that person's camp?" And Bob was always like, "Oh, I got him in my phone. Let me call him for you." And that was how it was with Bob.
Right.
Bob was always, and he would do it. A lot of people would say, yeah, let me call him up. And then they never do. You would ask Bob, and then Bob would throw you a text, and he'd be like, "Hey, can you talk to David Ellefson next Wednesday?" And be like, "Yeah, okay." And it would happen. And it was such a, he just knew every single person of any stature, big or small. And not only did he know them, but he was a true friend to all of them, all of us, right. All of us, all the, these rock guys that are posting today, the biggest rock guys in the business, they're posting about their friend passing away. They're not posting about, "Hey, here's a manager guy that we knew." They're posting deep feeling that everybody knew Bob.
Right.
Everybody. It's crazy.
Yeah. And, one of the biggest honors that I've had being involved with the Classic Metal Show or being involved in this music business is the fact that, he asked us to be a part of a couple of his documentaries. Obviously, it was right place, right time. He asked me if I wanted to be a part of the Band versus Brand. The only reason I was in that is because I was attending NAMM.
Right.
And I was there, and he was just like, and I hooked him up with Nader, and Nader was there. I don't know that if he knew Nader. I think he ran into him or knew him years ago, but he got to know Nader better, through me.
Right.
And he got to know Don a little bit better. He always thought Don was a dick, but
yeah.
he got to know Don through, my association with him, and vice versa, and it was only for the fact that I was at NAMM that he said, "Hey, I'm doing this thing for Cleopatra called Band versus Brand. Do you want to be in it?" I'm just like, "Yeah, fuck yeah, of course."
Hell yeah.
And I didn't know what he was going to ask or what was, it was all impromptu. It's just like, okay, we'll go sit on the couch over there and we're going to start rolling. I'm just like, okay. and that's exactly how it went too. And, he introduced me to Wolf Hoffman of Accept.
Sure.
We were at Wolf Hoffman's hotel room at NAMM, and he was filming Wolf for some of his Inside Metal stuff. And while I was there, he was just like, yeah, he says, I'll get a few comments from you while you're sitting here. So he rolled video for Inside Metal, and said,
right,
I don't know how much of this will make the cut, but hey, I got it here, and so on and so forth. So yeah, it was a big honor to be asked, hey, do you want to be a part of this? It's like, yeah, fuck yeah, I want to be a part of that.
Yeah. And it's funny because to him it wasn't a big deal. To me, and I'm with you, one of the biggest honors I've had doing this was being in these movies. One of the biggest things I've ever been able to do is fucking show my mom me on Hulu.
Sure.
And I know that sounds stupid and egotistical, and I don't care. Dude, that was the coolest thing ever, was showing my mom this documentary, Bay Area Godfathers 1, and we're watching it, and all of a sudden, there I am talking.
Yeah.
And my mom was like, holy shit, are you kidding me? And I was like, oh, yeah, Mom, it's just something I did.
Yeah.
I totally played it off, but it was, I mean, being in the videos for me is arguably one of the top things, one of the top business professional things that I've done since I've been in the music, radio, whatever business that we're in. It was an honor to be in that.
Absolutely.
And for me, looking at Bay Area Godfathers 2, I watched it today. I'm in it as much as Lars.
Yeah.
This is the biggest rock star in the fucking world.
Yeah.
And they got me in it talking in like the same number of segments as Lars, talking about, bullshit stuff, but whatever. And I don't know how Bob did that. I don't know how he remembered that I had said X about Laz Rocket, and then Jeff Thorpe said something about Laz Rocket, and because I mean, I know how Bob did his segments with me, and he sent me a bunch of questions that had nothing to do with Laz Rocket, and I just happened to mention them, and somehow it all came out to where they ended up doing a section about Laz Rocket in the DVD, and it's like, wow. That must have come together nicely somehow. I don't know how, but it did. The dude had an eye for it, man.
Yeah. And, a couple years in a row, I got to go and be a part of the Heavy Metal Walk of Fame induction ceremony. And
sure,
Bob, introduced me to your friend from, what was it, Concrete Records?
Oh, Tom Hazard?
No. Well, him too. I met him, or is it pay?
Who's the person?
He's dark-haired guy. I'm just trying to think. I sent you a couple of video clips where he was. What is his name? He's a guy that you dealt with through Pavement Records or something. Concrete Management, Pavement Records.
I don't know. Anyway, we'll figure it out.
And just
Muncie.
Yes, Muncie. That's him.
Muncie Ricci. Okay.
Yeah, him. Yeah, he was
Skateboard.
I knew it was one of those.
Yeah.
And obviously you dealt with him for years.
Sure.
But he was well aware of you, and Hazard, I met him, and of course Dave Ellefson. I got to work with him, do a round table session with him, and I'm so bad with names right now. I just can't think. Our author friend from England,
Joel MacGyver.
Yeah, Joel MacGyver.
Right.
I got to meet him, and at NAMM as well.
Sure.
He introduced me to him, and just Carmine Apiece. He just knew everybody.
Everybody. There was literally nobody that I don't think I ever said to Bob, "Hey, do you know this guy?" And he was like, he would say no. He might say, "Yeah, I've run into him once or twice," but he never. You'd be like, "Hey, man, do you know Rob Zombie?" "Yeah, I ran into Rob back in the," and he'd have a story. He'd be like, "Yeah, back in '91, they were trying to get signed, and and this is a piece that Bob never talked about. Did you happen to see on the Blabbermouth stories about Bob how many different places that Bob worked?
Yeah, with the record labels and stuff.
Yeah. Bob was involved with literally every independent label that went on to do something. He literally was involved with all of them. And I think that's probably where Bob made so many of his connections was, every band came through all those places and probably ran into Bob 2 or 3 times.
Right.
But definitely a different kind of character, man. Somebody I've never known anybody like Bob.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is Bob was not well off at all.
No.
The guy lived, hand to mouth a lot of the time. He didn't make a lot of money. He just did what he did because he loved it.
Mm-hmm.
And money and owning homes and fancy cars and all this other stuff that never seemed to be a priority with him.
Yeah.
He just did what he did and did what he did to get by, and that was good with him. He didn't care.
Yeah, he didn't. He never, he used, it's funny because he used to hound us about monetizing the show. He hounded both on the air and off the air. I don't know if he did it to you off the air.
I don't know why you guys don't do like a Patreon, and I don't know why you don't let the fans like donate money and this, that, and the other.
Yeah. And I used to say the same thing back then. I was like, "Well, why don't you do it?" He's like, "Well, we got a PayPal link." And I was like, "Dude, he had a PayPal link on his website that he never mentioned."
Right.
It was like he wasn't doing it either, but he thought that we should be doing it. But it wasn't important to him.
Right.
He wasn't driven. And the crazy weird thing, and I guess it's not weird, it's just kind of crazy, was it never stopped him from doing stuff.
No, not at all. I said, money was never the priority with him as far as like, oh, well, I got this gig doing these Inside Metal documentaries, and the only reason I'm doing this is because, I'm going to make a big paycheck. That right. Wasn't the thing. I'm doing it because this is what I do.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is whenever something cool was coming up, somebody would take care of him because he had built those kind of relationships with his friends, with his people, as recently as a year ago, when he went to the Metallica show.
Right.
Didn't Jonas Åkerlund just take those guys and put them in a limousine well,
he did. And Jonas took care of me and Bob and we went to dinner with Jonas, and we went to Morton's Steakhouse. And he picked up the bill and the whole thing. I was more than prepared to put down the money and whatever. And Jonas is like, no, I got this, fellas. And I was like, shit, Jonas is buying us dinner.
Yeah,
it's
but
not
for
like
people
I couldn't afford it, but regardless of that, it's just like I didn't expect that.
Well, no, but I mean, and I don't think Bob expected that ever either.
No,
it just always sort of worked out that way, that Jonas would do this, or, if I'm not mistaken, the Metallica guys flew him out for the 40th anniversary shows. And, he always, he made such an indelible mark on the people that he was loyal to for his whole life that they took care of him once they became, something. And so many of them became something that he bought a lot of goodwill.
Yeah.
Sure. And people were more than happy to give it back to him, which is a true testament to anybody as a man.
Right.
If people are lining up to do good things for you.
Right.
That really says something about who you were.
Yeah. Well, our friend, lawn friend, he for some reason, unfortunately, didn't enjoy that same accolades from people he helped through the years with Rip
Sure.
Magazine and stuff. We
Mhm.
heard stories that I helped this band, I promoted that band, I did this, I did that. These guys won't even take my phone call.
Yeah.
you know
Yeah. Well,
but it wasn't that way with Bob at all.
never heard anything like that from Bob ever.
Mm-mm. So anyway, you pulled some random clips here
I did.
of Bob appearing on the CMS, and Bob always had a great sense of humor, and we were always busting balls and back and forth and just cutting up and joking, and it was always he had a great sense of humor about him. He liked what we did because of our unabashed viewpoints and
Mhm.
our attitude that, well, we've got nothing to lose.
Yeah, and Bob was like so many of our listeners that have told us, and Bob told me this. I don't know, he probably told you this too. But Bob always said, "You guys say the things that I just can't say."
I know. And he said that. He goes, "I wish I could do that, but I can't because I want to come back again."
Yeah.
And it's just like, in other words, what Bob was saying in modern vernacular is, I don't want to get canceled.
Exactly.
And you and we do okay in our professional careers, that if we don't get that next interview with whomever it would be or whatever because of something we said, we're just like, yeah, who cares?
Yeah. So what?
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Well, you selected 4 different clips here, which are kind of funny. I listened to these earlier and I go, oh yeah, I remember that. That's pretty funny.
Sure.
So let's check out a couple of things here that
Okay.
Chris pulled for the show. And this one here is when Bob is promoting his T Radio V gig.
Right.
All right, here we go.
To 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It'll be streaming live on TRadioV.com. And then after that, later that night, they usually put it together as where you could just stream it live at any time on demand. So it's pretty cool. I had, John Bush was my first guest a couple weeks ago. And then last Tuesday, I had Bernie K from Sound Barrier and Willie Bass from Black Sheep, both as guests. And this coming Tuesday, Mr. Dawkins will be a guest on the show.
Yeah, he's
and
going
I
to
have the invite to both Chris and Neeley. Anytime they're in LA on the Tuesday, they want to come down, be a part of the show. Open invitation.
Nice.
Oh, you'll be canceled long before we make it there.
I think that might happen.
You'll be canceled long before that happens.
Oh, that was good.
Yeah. Now this next clip is probably one of the funniest clips.
Okay.
Of when you had posted the segment that Bob was on,
Yeah.
and you named it Bob Likes 10-year-old boys.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So here's Bob talking about one of his relatives Googling his name and coming across this, and thinking that he was like Gary Glitter or something.
Right.
She happens to Google my name. Wants to see the stuff I've done. She's interested. She's looking, wow, okay, cool. He's done, Inside Metal DVD, interview with Lars and blah, 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 and, all these interviews and stuff. And then she's going down. And all of a sudden on the Google page, Bob Nalbandian likes 10-year-old boys. Goes down a little bit further, and Bob Nalbandian gets his first hand job.
So good.
So she's looking at this shit, and she calls me, and she goes, dude, what the fuck is this? I go, what? She goes, it says, there's a thing on here. I Googled your name, and it says that you're into 10-year-old boys. And I said, and I told her, oh, that's a joke. It's like the classic metal show. And she's like, well, that's no joke. She happens to...
One was called "How the Classic Metal Show Ruined Bob Nalbandian's Life."
Yep. And what's funny is both those clips are still out there too. The 10-year-old boy one and the Bob gives his first hand job. They're both still there.
Right. And during the show opening tonight, I played the CMS rap that Scribble put together, and it says I got my first hand job from Bob Nalbandian.
Too funny.
All right. This one is called Bob Nalbandian as a Gangsta.
That's right. This was good.
All right. Let's check this out. Did you hear what Chris said? He said I have good gaydar.
Well, there you go. Of course, Chris would know. He is into that, what do you call it, the slushy guys?
Yeah, swishy guys.
Yeah.
Swishy, slushy, whatever the fuck you gay guys call
Are
it.
you drinking? Are you drinking tonight, Bob? You sound a little slurry.
I've been getting texts from your girl Serena. You got to call in. I'm on my way to the Metallica show. We just stopped off. We're grabbing something to eat, and we're in Oakland right now, and going to the Metallica show at the Fox Theater. So,
are you
yes,
are you
indeed,
packing, Bob? Are
you?
you packing? Being that you're in Oakland tonight?
Well, you know it, dude. You know I'm a hardcore gangbanger. You know how I roll, dude. I don't fuck around.
That's right. Did you hear what?
I don't fuck around.
Yeah. So the funny thing, and a little backstory on what we were talking about there.
Yeah.
I went out to LA where Bob was having an Inside Metal screening.
Right.
And I was out there and we did the Inside Metal screening in North Hollywood. And so after the whole thing was over, I was just like, let's all go out to eat. Let's go get something to eat. And I was picking up the tab. And so it was Bob and myself, and I think Serena and a couple other people were with us. And I was just like, yeah, where could we go? Because it was late and it was, midnight or so. And Bob knew a place there on the Strip in Hollywood, 24-hour like cafe type thing.
Right.
And the thing is that everywhere you go, and it's more common now because here we are 7-8 years later, these very effeminate males, everywhere we went, we were sitting there eating breakfast and we were being served, and every guy that worked in this place was one of these very effeminate gay guys.
Right.
And I go, what is with all these swishy guys around here? Because they're just all sashaying around like. and he goes, I never even paid any attention to that, because Bob lived in that area all his life.
Right.
So that just became like the norm. But me being from the Midwest, I mean, if you see a guy that acts kind of fruity like that, you don't, you're just kind of like, oh, what's with that,
Right.
And I mean, you see more of them now, but then it was just like these fucking dudes were everywhere, you know? And so that's where the whole swishy guy came from, the swishy guys.
Right.
So he thought that was the funniest damn thing, is when I said, what's up with these swishy guys? Swishing, just sashaying around and, serving you at all these restaurants and things. It's like, ugh, okay.
Right.
He just thought that was the funniest damn thing. And then this final clip here you picked out, it's called Bob Nalbandian puts Chris in his place.
Yeah, this was the week after he was supposed to co-host, but me, Stephanie, and Bob and John got completely wasted, and he was trying to call in, and we just didn't take the call because we were so hammered. It was the week that you were out wherever you were, that you brought John Astronomy on the show.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was at M3.
Yeah. So it was supposed to be John. It was supposed to be all of us, and Bob was going to do half the show with us. But Steph and John and me, we just got hammered, like blitzed, and So I was barely hosting the show as it was. Then you called in right about the same time that we were supposed to bring Bob on with John Astronomy.
Right.
So then he had to wait longer, and then he was all fucking bent out of shape that he, didn't drink, and he kept himself in check for the whole day so that he could do the show. And then we wrecked it by just being hammered and not letting him on the show. So he called in the next week to beat me up.
And I think the only way that I got your attention was I had to call your cell phone personally.
Right.
Dude, you have to take this call. You have to take this call.
Right.
Because I couldn't believe it that I ran into Mark and John and they wanted to come on the show.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah. So here's Bob Nalbandian putting Chris in his place.
That's right.
And you have your documentary screening, and if Chris actually makes the trip out, will you charge him a cover to get in?
Absolutely. I'm going to sit him in the back. Anyway, I just felt the need to give you guys shit about that.
Well, you should, Bob. That wasn't right.
I could have been knee deep in pussy last week, but instead I was stroking my cock to listening to you, John and Stephanie, and John Astronomy. Equal
Bob,
trade there.
I am
Thank you very
deeply
much.
sorry, Bob.
That was pretty good.
That was a good one. Dude,
and pussy.
He was being one of us. Dude, the funny thing too is that whole episode is worth. It's called something like Bob Nalbandian puts Chris or beats Chris's ass or something like that.
It's called beats Chris's ass. Yeah.
That I'm gonna recommend if you guys just want one episode of Bob on 20. That's the one. He is so funny in that phone call. Just hammering me about not taking his call, and he really goes in depth about how he was prepared, and he had a bunch of topics ready, and he just kicks my ass for like 30 minutes straight. It's great.
You're denied.
It's so funny, and then you're chiming right in with him. You're kicking me while I'm in the barrel as well. You're like, yeah.
So funny.
Good stuff.
Yeah. All right. You want to take a phone call?
Sure. Why not?
All right. Hail and kill call. Oh, he's gone. Whoever that
All right.
was. They were on hold forever, but
Well,
all right.
Call back whoever you are.
Yeah. So
Here, I got a question in the comments real quick.
Yes.
Tanner Poppet wants to know our favorite documentary that Bob directed.
I like the first two Inside Metals. I like the LA Metals, or that's the third one, I think. The LA Metal Scene Explodes.
Yeah.
I like that one a lot. I mean, I liked all of them. I mean, I can't say that I have a favorite per se, but the one that resonated with me personally would be the LA Metal Scene Explodes. So that would be the third and fourth edition. Sure.
Well, for me, it's an easy one, and it's not only because I'm in them, although that does play a great part in it, because as I said before, it is an honor of my life that Bob graced me with letting me be in. But Bay Area Godfathers, because I was in that scene. I was stationed in the military at that time, and I was a part of that scene, and I remembered a lot of the stuff that people had said and stuff like that. So for me, it would be the Bay Area Godfathers.
Yeah. Well, obviously I could pick Band versus Brand, which is another one that I enjoyed quite a bit. There was a lot of different interviews. I was in that one pretty significantly. And, they did a screener for that prior to the, the Metal Walk of Fame induction ceremony. But that's another good one. But if you want me to pick my favorite, it would be the LA Metal Scene Explodes. I enjoyed those two, back-to-back episodes.
Yeah, they're all really, really good. And just one more quick point I wanted to make about Bob too, about how this guy always took care of everybody. In the Bay Area Godfathers in the credits, and I just noticed it today, and I didn't even realize it, or maybe I did and I forgot. He credited our friend Rob Kern.
Oh yeah, right. For being the videographer for you.
Yeah, and Rob invited me out to his house because he had a cool place to shoot it.
Right.
So he invited me out to his house just to shoot my questions, and Bob sent me my questions, and that was like the nicest thing that Bob reached out to me and was like, who did your video work? And I told him, and he was like, okay, and he didn't say nothing about it, and then it just showed up in the credits that Rob Kern was in the credits of both movies. I was like, that's a fucking stand-up guy. You know, he didn't have to do that, but he did. And that was very stand-up of Bob to have consideration for somebody that he clearly did not know at all, but he still took the time to give him credit, you know?
I agree. Hail and Kill, caller, you're on the air.
Hail and Kill. I'm not going to say Happy New Year because I'm not very happy.
With you.
I just wanted to say that Bob Nalbandian was one of the coolest people I've ever known, and we used to talk a lot. I used to ring him in when he was traveling a lot, and he was he gave me all kinds of mentoring and all kinds of stuff. He said some very cool things to me about my music, and it was always helpful, and I'm pretty gutted.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. And Bob liked you, man. I know that because Bob would ask me about, you know, it's funny because, and I guess we're pulling the curtain back a whole lot tonight, but Bob would like to ask, like he would ask me anyway, and probably Neeley too. He'd be like, what's the deal with this guy? Or what's the deal with that guy? Is that, you know, he always thought for some reason that we had plants. Like he always thought that like some of Tim's calls were just us like writing shit, and that Tim would be the fall guy. And I would always tell him, I'd be like, dude, we don't plant anything, you know. Tim just calls and asks what he asks. He's like, that guy's fucking great, you know. Once he got to knowing, you knew him through what, like Facebook, Tim?
No, I used to call him. I used to talk to him.
Okay, all right.
And
I just know he liked you a lot. He definitely became a very big fan of Tim James.
Well, the one thing I'm kind of upset about is I didn't even know he was sick. And it was funny because at Christmas time, I was on Christmas Day, I need to call Bob next week. I didn't even know he was sick.
Yeah, he I mean, dude, look, you know, now that I'm not weeping like a baby, you know, I can talk about this a little more, but he'd been sick for a while. He'd been sick pretty much most of 2022. And he didn't want it out there. He just didn't he you know, the few of us that were in his very close circle of friends, you know, that he was tight with, he really went out of his way to say, you know, don't talk about this. Don't, you know, share this on your show. Don't share it with your friends. Don't share it with people that I know. He just didn't want people to know that. So he, you know, he very, very much was, you know, wanted it to be private, and I think we all respected that, you know, me and, you know, the only two that I know that knew was myself and Matt Hartnett. And, you know, that was by Bob's wishes. That was, you know, I know a lot of people that are finding out that he was sick for a while are kind of like, why didn't I know this? Or why, you know, this or that. And the truth is that, you know, that was Bob's call, and, you know, he had every right to make that call.
Well, fair enough. I'm gonna continue, you know, doing what I do to honor people like Bob, and you guys too. Hail and Kill.
All right.
There goes Tim.
There you go.
So look at Tim. He made a personal friendship with Bob and actually spoke with him on the phone. How about that?
Yeah, that's something. So, yeah, I mean, I know he liked he liked Tim a lot. So
Yeah. Well, Tim is a overzealous music enthusiast, and obviously Bob did this for his entire career, his entire
Right.
existence, and so Bob, I would say, would had a certain respect for Tim and his passion for his musical, enjoyment, and so they
Sure.
definitely had that in common.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Are you getting another call or no?
No, go ahead.
No, Braverman is trying to call in.
I know. I gave him the number. He needs to call.
Yeah, he's like, put me on. I'm like, I don't control that.
Calling the cell phone doesn't do any good, so I gave him the number to call. So
is it the 800?
Yeah, I gave it to him.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I sent it to him.
Oh, okay.
Eric, call the studio line, not my cell phone. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, did he call your cell?
Yeah, he called my cell phone like 7 times in a row, and it's like, dude, call the studio line.
Yeah, he just texted me. There we go.
So anyway, yeah. So he's chomping at the bit to come on and tell his Bob Nalbandian
Okay.
story. Hail and kill, caller. You're on the air. Hello.
Hello.
All right. Are you there or not? Come on. Speak.
I'm here.
All right. Now we hear you.
Yeah. I'm here.
All right. Eric, go ahead.
I just want to tell you, man, Bob Nalbandian, I knew him twice as long as you boys.
And where did you meet Bob originally, Eric?
At a heavy metal concert in Los Angeles, California.
When?
Well, it was before you were born. It was probably like 1986.
Okay. And what was the circumstances you ran into Bob, and how did you, get to know him, and why did you get to know him?
Well, he's the anti-EB.
Well, Eric, you're going to have to get
He's
to the point.
anti-EB, man.
Go ahead.
You know how you guys said a little bit ago on the show, I wish I could say what you guys say.
Yeah.
It's that same relationship.
Yeah,
Okay.
but what was Bob doing at the time that made you remember Bob? What was he doing at the time?
He was the only one that could get the same backstage pass as me.
Okay.
And so like we're talking like Metallica, Slayer, every band in the world. And then
Right.
we go out there and Flotsam and Jetsam, I was working those Flotsam and Jetsam albums in the mid 80s. He was just on top of that stuff.
Yeah.
He always
So what was Bob doing at that time? What was his position in the music business to where
I didn't know. I thought he was a journalist, then I thought he was a record company executive, then I thought he was a journalist. So it was like he had his hand in the pot all the time, and he often said, I wish I could act like you, but I can't because I want to have a career in this industry.
And what were you doing at the time?
He was
Smoking weed. Smoking weed with Jason Newsted or Tom Mariah. And I told Tom Mariah this today. He was sad.
I think all of us are sad, dude, because we all knew Bob and he was such a straight up guy.
Dude, he contributed to the Last Supper Museum. And also that thing you said where he knew everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Like everywhere he went, he was like Mr. Polite. Hey, EB, do you know Carl? Of Carl's Jr. fame? Like, what? No. Oh, yeah, this is Carl Jr. He knew everybody in LA, and he was always polite and introducing. And he always sat in a folding chair and watched me do my work. And he always said, I fucking love this. Do it. And you go to these Metallica shows now, and they charge their grandmother, like $700 for a ticket.
Sure.
So yeah, no, there's no joke here. So Kirk Hammett would be like, Grandma, I want you to come to the show. I put you on the list. It's only going to be $700. Bob would be the one person that got a free ticket.
It's true.
There's no joke here. There's no joke here. And he would always say the same thing about us three. I wish I could do what you guys do, but I want a career in this industry.
Well, Bob understood the power of being canceled early on.
You think? No, I mean, I can't remember how many Slayer, Metallica shows. Do you want to hear a funny, incredible
Sure.
Andy and James Hetfield DB story real quick?
Sure.
All right. Well, Metallica went on a tour, and they had that Jerry Cantrell character open up for him. You ever heard of that guy?
Yeah, Alice in Chains.
All right. So, yeah, he was a solo thing opening up.
Yeah.
And I think like Mike from Faith No More, and maybe even Robert was out there being tortured. So we're in Las Vegas, and I'm working for their magazine, which Stefan Shirazi took over, called So What. So we provided Stefan a career, and it was in Las Vegas. And James Hetfield freaks out because I'm at a meet and greet interviewing the people for the So What club, their club. And like he freaks out enough. This guy's in the way. Ah! I was like, are my passes being taken care of? Being thrown out? Like James Hetfield just loses it. Next day, hey, we're in San Diego. I see Bob. Hey, Bob. Why don't you, or I call him Slob. And I'm like, hey, Slob, come hang out with me. And I'm sitting there on the dock, like the loading dock behind the venue in San Diego, like Coors Light Amphitheater.
Okay.
And this is right before they put out the Garage Days, revisited Garage Days with like Turn the Page and all that.
Okay.
So they're going in the studio the next day. So I'm outside. I can't remember if I know I was smoking weed, and I think I had my left hand around someone's neck, and Bob was sitting there saying, please stop. And then James Hetfield comes walking up like, we got to go. We got to jump behind these trucks and buses because if James sees us, we're done. So why is he walking by himself in between trucks and buses behind Coors Amphitheater right now? So James sees me, and he goes, hey. I'm like, uh-oh, we're getting fired again. I just want to tell you, man, I'm sorry about last night. And I hope you accept my apology. Well, I was like, you should tell that to Bob. And Bob's just sitting there with his eyes. His eyes were bigger than I ever saw him before. They were like, his eyes were the size of like, ping pong paddles.
Right.
And James says, you know what? You always make us laugh. I'm really sorry. I'm supposed to end this tour and then go in the studio and record Bob Seger songs tomorrow. I'm sorry. And I hope you guys are having fun. He looks at Bob. He looks at me. He looks back at Bob and says something like, hey, man, please, really, are you really hanging out with EV? Because he does what we can't do. I wish we can do, what he does, which became the backbone of the classic metal show.
Well, we owe it all to you, Eric.
No, not to me. No fucking hell. That's me. I don't know what year that is, but just that story. But sometimes my family's together having like Christmas holidays, like, just like Bob says, we'd like to be like you, but we have to have a life. So I just want to say that Bob helped me. Also, he knew a famous artist that he was a roommate with named Howard Teeman. You go on his website, he has the sickest art, and many of his art has been sold at every smoke shop or head shop in the United States. And he made a serial killer
Last Supper. And Bob made sure that me and Howard got together so Howard could sign that for me and write me a note about the history behind it. And like that, like this is like this year.
Okay. Very cool.
That's pretty. No, Bob was a ridiculous champion. And that thing about you saying he knew everybody, Chris, that's an understatement. It's an understatement. Because we would just go to Carl's Jr. And he's like, hey, Melissa, do you know EB? EB's hilarious. I'm like, what? And then later, we'd be at the Arco. We had to get gas at the Arco. Hey, you guys know EB? Crazy shit. Another night was Slayer performed at Universal Amphitheater. And after the show, there was a big meet and greet thing. And I go in there and I see Bob and I start just telling him how much of a homo he is and all that, And Paul Gray, you ever heard of Paul Gray?
Slipknot Paul Gray?
Yeah, he's sitting next to Bob. And he's going, I want to be in your Slayer videos. And I will pay you to fly to Iowa and interview us. And I'm like, Bob, help this boy. Help this boy. His brain's playing tricks on him right now. And Bob's like, yeah, I don't know if you want to be in Iowa. But these are good timey stories.
Sure.
So anyway, he really, really, really cared about you guys. And I believe that he didn't tell me he was sick, like 5 weeks ago, was because he knew I would be showing up with pizzas and Coca-Colas and Canadian Club and maybe my family, my motorhome, Snake, my dog. Bob, you got 5 weeks to live. We're going to fucking Lars's house right now. And he'd be like, well, we can't just go. We're going to Lars's now. Get the fuck out of the bed. I think that's why, but I think that I really appreciate you guys talking about him tonight. Cool. I really appreciate you guys talking about him tonight. Like you said, you cry. I cried hard. I'm an easy cry guy. If I watch the end of Scarface or Patton or Wendell Neely love letters between him and the gals, I cry. I cry, and I just am so upended by that. Me and Tom Mariah work together every day, and Bob loves Slayer.
Mm-hmm.
No, he loves Slayer, man.
Oh, yeah, he did.
And he was he's so messed up that he thought that I became a connection to Slayer for him. That's how fucked up this dude was in my life. Hey, EB, like, they did those, they retired, at the Forum, 2 nights at the Forum.
Right.
And Bob's like, what time are you coming in for those? I'm like, I'm not going to those shows, you bastard. I'm retired. And Tom's retired. He's like, you're not going to go to the last... I'm like, well, Robert Trujillo, Kirk Hammett. Did you know Kirk Hammett shroomed? Listen, classic metal show. Listen to this. Kirk Hammett went to the last Slayer show and shroomed.
Nice.
It's no joke here. So, anyway... Just thanks a lot, you guys, and it's a tremendous salute to Bob. And he was the anti-EB.
Yep, Bob was a good dude.
He treated people so well, and every time I was turning over like a table, drinks and the food and the table, and just throwing the table or throwing a TV out the 3rd-story window. He would always be like, dude, EB, why? Stop. I'm like, I don't even live in Los Angeles. You're supposed to be throwing the TV out. No joke here. Are you okay, Wendell?
I'm good, Eric. I just
Well, I just didn't know if you were doing nitrous oxide.
no, not today, Eric.
You know, okay. Real quick, is it midnight there yet, or?
It is only 10:54 Central Time, and it is 11:54 Eastern Time, where Chris is.
Oh, let me do this real quick. Let me do this real quick for Bob, if you don't mind. Do you mind?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Do a quick number. All right. Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should old acquaintance be forgot and the days of old lang syne? For old lang syne, my dear, for old lang syne, we'll drink a cup of kindness yet for the sake of old lang syne. And surely you will buy your cup, and I'll surely will buy mine. We'll take a cup of kindness yet for the sake of old lang syne. Thank you, Bob Nalbandian. Fucking cool dude. Happy New Year to all the classic metal fans of the world. And certainly Wendell and Chris, who definitely paid their dues in it. And just thank you for being such a good friend to him.
All right, Eric. Appreciate you checking in.
You have to understand. He loved you guys.
Yep. We
know.
We're all a big family, Eric.
All right. Well, I'm going to go back to, I got to go back to work. You know, I'm working the bar and I got to broom the peanut shells and the sawdust off the floor for the Cowboys.
Right.
And then also, you know, fire a couple rounds into the air and just thank you guys. And thanks for letting me say that for Bob. And am I allowed to request one song?
Yeah, go ahead, Eric. I'll make it the song that we go out of this segment with.
I love you guys. So I think for this one, and this could make some sense to some people, and Bob would understand, just go ahead and play Disposable Heroes. Seriously, no bullshit.
Okay, we'll do
I
it.
can do that. All right, Eric.
I love you guys. Happy New Year, everybody. I'll talk to y'all soon.
All right, see you,
All
Eric.
right, man. See ya.
Bye.
All right. Well, there goes Eric.
Well, here's the question. Do we hang in here for 3 minutes for the new year?
Sure. There's no reason not to.
Yeah, no reason not to at this point. Yeah, man. You know what, man? And maybe this is a good way to end the new year is by celebrating, you know, our friend.
Right.
You know, going into the new year on a good memory of a good dude. That's okay.
I agree. You know, again, one of the things that I looked forward to doing in January was going to NAMM, which of course that got upended, due to the whole COVID thing. And I believe it's going to be in April this year, and then it's going to get back into January the following year. But if I attend NAMM again, it certainly isn't going to be the same. It's not going to be the same at all.
It'll feel hollow. It'll definitely feel hollow.
It just won't be the same without the leader of Nalbandian's Merry Men, as he led us through the halls of NAMM and greeted everybody who knew him, and he also introduced me to producer. What's his name? Today my mind is just fried.
Dude, I'm with you, man. Everything's a blur today.
Any other day I could think of all the names of the people that he introduced me to, and today I'm just drawing a blank.
Well, dude, the reality is we're both pretty shook up. I am. I know I am. I am very, very shook up. Yeah, everything's a blur, but anyway, you met a producer guy that's famous, and we'll think of the name sometime.
Roy Z.
Roy Z. Okay, yeah.
He introduced me to Roy Z, which was very cool, and getting to know him a little bit, and that was very cool. And who produced the Megadeth albums?
Max Norman.
Max Norman. He introduced me to Max Norman.
Yeah. And then you got a video of Max for me, which
Yeah,
was awesome.
I know. So even though I was away in LA and ran into these different people, I tried to bring you in.
Yeah.
And had it not been for Bob, I would have never got to meet those people or get to know them. And he asked me, hey Max, this is my friend Neeley. He's from the Classic Metal Show, and anybody who knew Bob, if you were a friend of Bob's, you were a friend of them.
Yeah. And everybody was a friend of Bob, so
so the relationships there were pretty awesome. So
yeah, exactly.
Anyway, so I appreciate it, Bob. Thank you. And you're going to be deeply missed.
Already are, man. Already are. Just a sad time, but I'm glad that we actually did do this tonight, because as much as I didn't want to do this, originally it's been plenty cool, and it's been cool to remember some of these moments, and I'm sure we will again. That's the one thing about the show. This show is that there's so much audio out there and so many fun times that we had. I'm sure we'll revisit it from time to time. Bob doesn't just disappear.
No, he'll be with us forever.
He's a permanent fixture on the CMS.
I agree.
Very much a permanent forever, as much as me or you. At least in my mind, he's a permanent piece of the Classic Metal Show. So Godspeed, my friend. Gonna miss you.
I agree. Well, if you're on the East Coast, Happy New Year, everyone.
Yeehaw.
So it's 2023.
Okay, good.
I still have an hour in 2022, so I'm going to suffer for another.
You have another hour of shitty year to go.
Well, you can bask in the anew.
Yeah, I can start getting past this bullshit year.
Right. All right. Well, we'll play Eric's request here. Some Metallica with Disposable Heroes. We'll dedicate it to our friend Bob Nalbandian, and we'll come back and maybe do another hour. Can you hang in?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm all right now. Now I got a little buzz going. I'm good.
All right. Well, to Bob Nalbandian, one of the best ever. A tragic loss in 2022, and well, here it is, Bob. This is from your friend Eric Braverman, and for all the fans of heavy metal and hard rock around the world, it's Metallica with the Disposable Heroes exclusively here
on your Classic Metal Show.
Thanks for checking out this episode of The Classic Metal Show. Get all of our episodes uncensored at www.theclassicmetalshow.com. Join us weekly from 9 p.m. till 3 a.m. Eastern at www.cmsradio.net. Participate in the live chat room at www.chatandkill.com. Once again, thank you for checking out The Classic Metal Show with Neeley and Chris. Hail and kill, fuck you, pal, and hand job!